Um, Welcome to this COPE podcast, which is one of our activities for Peer Review Week 2018. Peer Review Week is a global annual event celebrating the essential role that peer review plays in maintaining scientific quality. The theme for 2018 is diversity in peer review, and many activities and events are scheduled during Peer Review Week that aim to foster a global discussion about diversity and inclusivity in peer review. Today, we're speaking with Professor Andy Hoare, Vice President of Research of the Hong Kong University, for an institutional perspective on training and mentoring to enhance diversity in peer reviewers among early career researchers. Hong Kong University is one of the institutions in COPE's pilot project on institutional membership. Welcome, Professor Hoare. I understand. Glad to have you here. I understand Hong Kong University is a public research university, but can you briefly tell us about the range of research programs that you oversee in your role?
Thank you. I look after a range of activities. That's starting with research, and research, you're talking about a whole range of activities and process in creating new knowledge, in application of new knowledge, as well as in transformation of new knowledge. And of course, in today's environment, research is closely related to innovation and entrepreneurship. So this is why it is very natural for me. Also, when I'm talking about research, I'm also talking about innovation process. I'm also talking about tech transfer. I'm also talking about knowledge exchange and including entrepreneurship. So this is a whole portfolio that I'm looking at in the University of Hong Kong.
Great, thank you. It seems to me that the diversity of the pool of peer reviewers is directly related to the diversity and inclusivity of the body of researchers in any institution. It sounds like you have quite a range of activities to oversee. So I'll start this conversation by asking you what Hong Kong University has done to recruit a diverse and talented group of researchers, and if and how that has contributed to diversity in the availability of peer reviewers in these various fields.
Well, let me give you the broader scene of the background of the University of Hong Kong. As you know, that we are a global university. We are in Asia, but we are a global university. So first and foremost, globality and international perspective of the university is extremely important. What it means is that when we hire people, when we recruit staff, when we look at the best students, we're looking at the world. We're not just looking at Hong Kong or mainland China or Asia. And so that sort of globality and global source of talents is actually, I would say, in our DNA. So that's where the diversity comes from. And the second part, of course, in almost everything we do, I cannot think of any exceptions. In fact, we benchmark with peers. The peers refer to a range of institutions and universities in the world. And again, that include Asia, that include Hong Kong, that include mainland China, and include globally as well. So this is another area that we look at. And then the last point perhaps I look at is graduate students and ECR, and you know that, and I don't have to convince you or the colleagues here, and this is our future, and this is where the high value talents are trained for the future society and the world. And this is why we are particularly careful when we are talking about graduate students, from undergraduate to graduate students, from graduate students to postdoctorate to research assistants, and subsequently many becomes academics, and some stay in these universities, and most of them go elsewhere. So this is why in the talent pipeline training, we look at a diverse source of talents, and number one. And number two is that when they're here, we are very specific in trying as much as possible to give them diverse global opportunities so that they understand what the world is about. And I think peer review, going back to today's topic, is part of the process.
So peer review is an integral part then of the research training that you're providing in many of your programs. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but of course we can always do better. Let me elaborate on that.
Okay.
The peer review process probably starts at the undergraduate stage. The undergraduate, as you know, that many universities and depends on the individual curriculum and depends on the courses and depends on the lecturers and professors. And I myself, for example, and was a professor in the National University of Singapore in Singapore, and we already practice, and that's also seen in Hong Kong anyway. In a class, for example, when students you can have a project, you can have an assignment, and students submit exercises and submit the homework, so to say, and you can already engage and introduce a peer review process when a particular assignment, particular project is actually reviewed and evaluated and assessed by the people in the class. So I think this is what I would call the beginning of the peer review process in the undergraduate stage, when students begin to realize that their opinions are important and they are expected to look at how others produce a piece of work which they never thought of, which other can have present their views which they never thought of. So in the process, you have subsequent discussions and you can have a criticism, for example, and that is this begin to introduce the healthy environment of debate and discussions and seeing different views. And this is, I think, the beginning of diversity. When it comes to the graduate studies, now that's a very getting a little bit more intense. You know, in a typical research postgraduate study, and you talk about open review. Now, this is not a very structured way. This is different from when I'm talking about submitting a paper to an international journal for peer review. Now, that's a different form, I would say that. Usually, what you would see is a professor with a team of, say, 5 to 10 people, and they have these weekly or bi-monthly or monthly meetings. In the meeting themselves, and peers and colleagues and students present their ideas. And at that process, in the point, then students would listen to their ideas, and some professors are more vigorous than the rest, and they would start asking different opinions on this piece of work. And therefore, everybody is invited to give an opinion. And this is where the ideas are bounced, and this is where the criticisms are taken and compliments are taken as well. So I think I would say that in a graduate studies training, the peer review process is actually integrated into the learning process and included in the lab development process in the research world. So it is less formal, perhaps, less structured as what you see in the academic world when we are talking about peer review of a proposal or a conference grant or a particular project. That's what I would say.
It sounds to me like one of the things that you are trying to teach students in this entire process is that their opinions matter and that they have a voice and that they need to be able to articulate their ideas in a constructive manner, which translates very well into actually peer review for scholarly papers once they graduate, so that and they can become formal peer reviewers in a journal, for example. Is that am I understanding correctly what you're saying?
That's clearly the way. I think the way we approach it is when a students at the graduate study stage, students must understand that part of the training is to appreciate and to understand what others are doing in a related field, in a related area. And therefore, from that point onwards, they would know that their opinions and their advice would be taken into consideration in the collective decision process. Because you know that peer review is all about, at the end of it, is making certain decisions, making certain recommendations. And people would understand this. In the process, it is not decided by one person's view or one person's opinion, even though the person can be a well-renowned researcher. So I think the peer review process lets students understand the importance of diversity and let people understand that even though for something that appears to be very appears to be universally true, it can be debated and people can give their opinions. And this is where that you can improve yourself and get new ideas from time to time.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. This openness in the research environment and transparency is one of the things that COPE is very strongly advocating in journals, in publication, in notices about errors and things like that. We're very very concerned that everything be transparent, and so it sounds like you're giving students a good baseline. So I wanted to go ahead.
I would say that, but let me just put a caveat there. And when the way I described it is very dependent on research groups. It's very dependent on the style of the supervisors or professors or advisors. It's very depending on the background of the students, how forthcoming they are in this as well. So I would say that while we are doing this, and we still keep thinking about and struggling, if you like, is there a better way of doing it? Is there a more structural way? Is there a more formal way of training? Or this is the best way for us to approach it? So this is an issue that constantly comes to our mind.
Right, and that I was thinking that exact same thing, and I was going to ask a follow-up question here as to if you have any ideas about what you think is necessary to improve the training and mentoring of peer reviewers in your institution or in any institution, and in particular, do you think you said it's very much based on the strength of and the cohesiveness of the research groups? But is there a way that universities can work with various groups to help develop those skills in the graduate training programs and with their faculty?
I do think so. For example, sometimes, and we are beginning to do more and more of that, we begin to introduce, for example, that we do it in several ways. One, of course, we introduce the global leaders to come to the university and talk about various issues, not just about a subject of their interest, but also global issues and also a subject of graduate training and development. And this area of peer review is an area that we have started and introducing people to come to the campus and talk about it. But I think we'll do more. We'll do more is because I think that what I just said is it happens depending on which faculties and which professors you are working with. Some people have more exposure than the others. So therefore, when we do that, we would open to the entire community so that particularly for people who are less familiar with it, would come to listen to experts sharing their thoughts and come to listen to colleagues giving their experience. And this is part of our development and training, I would say. It's a very important part. And I'll give you some specific examples.
Okay.
That will connect me to innovation, because nowadays, as I said earlier on, innovation development is an extremely important part of our graduate program. What we do is that we invite students, two things. One is as any ideas that they think would be worth pursuit. It can be academic ideas for commercialization. It can be an idea for some community benefit. It can be an idea that would improve a particular policy in the government, for example. So we encourage them to put forward these ideas and to an open forum. And this is where the innovation event starts. When they present this idea in an open forum, can be 10 minutes, can be 20 minutes, and we invite everybody in the forum to put forward their view. Now, constructive, it can be critical, it can be very critical, but it can be very constructive. But it also encourage them to whatever they recommend, whatever they suggest, give a reason behind that. So that, this is a very good idea because of what? This is good but not workable because of what? So I think when you're doing it often enough, and students begin to get the habit of looking at something constructively and with an opinion, So we do this innovations process. We call it innovation event, and this is where that students begin to get a little bit more training when it comes to giving their opinions in a particular piece of work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's very similar to what COPE does at our forums. We have editors and publishers who bring problems to the forum, things they don't know how to solve, and we sort of say it's like the crowd wisdom, the wisdom of the crowd, that
Yes.
we've had various experiences in different fields, and we all offer opinions, but we also back it up with supporting data, why we think this is appropriate, and it sounds like you're doing very similar things. Well, that's really been extremely interesting, Dr. Hoare, for I think it'll be very interesting to our members. But I wanted to ask you before we close if you had anything else that you wanted to add about the importance of diversity in peer review, or what does diversity and inclusivity mean in peer review. If there's anything else, any other additional thoughts you wanted to add here, I'd be happy to hear them.
I do have. We appreciate diversity and inclusivity, and also we understand the importance of having different thoughts and opinions, and of course we appreciate the openness and transparency, and we appreciate, of course, that it is important for us to learn from peers, and this is a very integral part of our learning and teaching as well as research process. But there's something that is coming in, particularly in today's environment, is IP. This is a difficult part because if you look at it, research, there's a lot of research knowledge now channeling to technology transfer. Eventually, it can be a commercializable ideas. It can be something for industrial process. Can even be eventually becomes a business secret. That sort of thing. So therefore, the IP management is increasingly important in a university like ours, and And when it comes to IP, and you know that this goes down a different path, and these involve patents, for example. This involve a very secretive licensing deal with a company, for example. Now, if you look at it carefully, then you begin to realize that fundamentally there are some conflicts with the open review process, because those discussions and those considerations are usually done in a very secretive and confidential methods, and they're done by a very small group of people who can be leading experts and who understand the process very well, who understand the IP management very well. It is rarely done in an open fashion, done by junior researchers or ECRs, or let alone postgraduate students. So you can see that the difficulty for us is that the development of IP, the management of IP, and how does it internalize? How does it relate to the open peer reviews process involving even junior researchers as well as young students? So this is something that I think the community will continue to debate upon, and something that we have to be very careful with and understand the issue of confidentiality. Because let me finish with this. While we are talking about a peer review, we always remind people peer review is not something that must be done with everybody, with all the ideas, because the problem is there's a serious issue of conflict of interest. When you're related to something, when you're related to somebody, when you're related to a piece of work even, and there is always a potential conflict. And this is where that while you're giving a judgment, while you're giving an opinion, and people need to understand, is there anything that you're related to this piece of work, or anything that you're related to this particular inventor, for example, when you're making the judgment. So that sort of knowledge is important, and this is where the conflict of interest comes in. And I think this is something that everybody who is involved in peer review need to understand this, and perhaps the future of that is to how to compare this and understand where is the limit, and what are the difficulties and what are the challenges in the peer review process.
Absolutely, and you raise a lot of interesting ethical issues that revolve or involved in the peer review process that everybody struggles with, not just with
Yeah,
intellectual property,
yeah,
but the whole concept of open science and so forth. But that's
correct. Yeah.
probably a theme for another peer review week. And it's something that everybody struggles with, and but so I'm very happy that you raised that, and that students are beginning to be aware of the need for confidentiality in all of this, and the need for disclosures of conflict of interest, because that's extremely important, as you say.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much. I want to thank you for your time and your contributions to this discussion about diversity, inclusivity, and peer review.
I'm
And
very
for
happy to talk to you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, and for our listeners who are listening to this podcast when it's posted, you can find more information about Peer Review Week 2018 on the COPE website. And our website address is www.publicationethics.org. And Peer Review Week is a recurring event every year, so look for Peer Review Week 2019, and we'll see what the topic is, and maybe it'll be one of the issues that Professor Andy Hoare raised in his discussion today. So thank you so much for participating today.
Thank you very much.